Here's the brutal truth that Giants fans don't want to hear. Their team just delivered one of the most underwhelming offensive performances in recent memory, and it exposed fundamental problems that could haunt them all season long. Analyzing the Giants' devastating 21-6 collapse against Washington. When you manage just 6 measly points in an NFL game, you're not just losing, you're embarrassing yourself on national television. That's exactly what happened when the Giants faced the Commanders in their Week 1 matchup, and the aftermath reveals some uncomfortable truths about this team's readiness for the season. John Schmeelk's offensive reality check. When numbers tell the whole story. Let's be completely honest here. This wasn't a game that required deep analytical skills to understand what went wrong. When your offense fails to reach the end zone even once and manages a pathetic conversion rate of just 4 for 16 on third downs, you've essentially handed your opponent the victory on a silver platter. But here's where it gets really concerning. The underlying issues run much deeper than just poor execution. The Giants did manage to put together one genuinely impressive scoring drive during the first half, a methodical 76-yard march that consumed 16 plays before settling for a field goal instead of the touchdown they desperately needed. During this drive, they discovered a formula that actually worked, getting the football out of Russell Wilson's hands quickly, providing him with adequate protection when they needed more time, and utilizing Tyrone Tracy Jr.'s rushing ability to create manageable down and distance situations. Each of Tracy's 2 carries gained 6 yards, setting up the kind of third down conversions that keep drives alive. But here's the part most people miss. That successful formula completely disappeared for the remainder of the game, and the reasons why should terrify Giants supporters. The offensive line's interior protection became virtually non-existent, allowing Washington's defenders to penetrate consistently, whether the Giants were attempting to run or pass. This created a domino effect where early down failures led to increasingly difficult third down scenarios. The kind of situations where even the most talented quarterbacks struggle to find success. The left side of the offensive line appeared particularly overwhelmed when facing Washington's defensive schemes, resulting in Wilson absorbing multiple hits that clearly affected his decision-making and accuracy as the game progressed. And this is the part most people miss. As physical and mental fatigue set in during the second half, Wilson began abandoning clean pockets prematurely, forcing himself into uncomfortable throwing positions where accuracy becomes nearly impossible. When your quarterback is throwing off his back foot or while moving laterally, you're essentially conceding the down before the play even develops. But the controversy doesn't stop there. The Giants' skill position players must shoulder significant blame for failing to capitalize on the limited opportunities Wilson was able to create. Receivers, running backs, and tight ends repeatedly failed to secure catchable passes, turning potential game-changing moments into drive-killing incompletions. In today's NFL, where margin for error is practically non-existent, these mental mistakes are absolutely inexcusable. When your entire offense manages just 231 total yards, pointing fingers at individual players becomes somewhat meaningless because the failure was truly collective. Every single offensive player contributed to this disaster, and that reality should concern fans more than any single position group struggling. Dan Salomon's Red Zone Nightmare, where championship dreams go to die, while television viewers were dealing with NFL Red Zone technical difficulties during Week 1. The Giants were experiencing their own Red Zone crisis that had nothing to do with broadcast issues and everything to do with fundamental offensive inadequacy. Russell Wilson's post-game comments cut straight to the heart of the matter. I think the game was simple in the sense that we didn't convert in the red zone. This statement, while accurate, barely scratches the surface of how catastrophically the Giants failed when they had golden opportunities to score touchdowns. Consider these absolutely mind-boggling statistics. The Giants managed 2 separate trips inside Washington's 20-yard line, but emerged from both opportunities without a single touchdown. Even more damning, They ran 8 individual plays inside the 10-yard line, prime scoring territory where NFL teams typically punch the ball into the end zone, and somehow managed a net loss of 3 yards. Let that sink in for a moment. When positioned just 10 yards from pay dirt, the Giants actually moved backwards. But here's where it gets controversial. Should we blame the play calling, the execution, or both? Head coach Brian Daboll's post-game analysis suggests the problem started much earlier than the red zone failures, pointing to consistently poor first down production that created increasingly difficult situations throughout entire drives. The Giants' first down struggles were genuinely alarming. Wilson completed just 5 of 13 passing attempts for a measly 56 yards, while the ground game managed only 47 yards on 11 carries. These numbers represent more than just statistical failures. They demonstrate a complete inability to establish any kind of offensive rhythm or momentum. When you're consistently behind the chains from the very beginning of each drive, even reaching the red zone becomes a minor miracle rather than an expected outcome. Daboll's assessment highlighted the cascading effect of these early down failures. We just never got into a rhythm in the early part of the downs, which affected everything. The line of scrimmage, there was a play here, a play there, a block here, a read there, that we just kept getting behind the sticks and could never get into a good enough rhythm. And this is the part that should truly concern Giants fans. Even when they managed to keep games competitive, Washington led by just 14-6 with 7 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. They couldn't capitalize on crucial scoring opportunities that could have completely changed the game's trajectory. Matt Setak's defensive breakdown, when strengths become weaknesses, just like their offensive counterparts, the Giants' defense struggled to establish any consistent effectiveness against Washington's attack, and the numbers reveal some deeply troubling trends that could plague them throughout the entire season. Let's start with the run defense, historically the Achilles heel of Giants' defenses over recent seasons. While facing a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels certainly complicates defensive game planning due to his dual-threat capabilities, the Giants' inability to contain Washington's ground game was genuinely alarming. The Commanders accumulated 220 rushing yards on 32 attempts, averaging an astronomical 6.9 yards per carry that would have been even higher without 3 end-of-game kneel-downs that artificially lowered the average. But here's where it gets really concerning. Washington found the end zone twice via rushing touchdowns, with scores from Ja'Cory Prosky-Merritt and Deebo Samuel, while every single Commanders player who carried the football averaged at least 4.3 yards per attempt. These aren't the numbers of a defense that's merely having an off day. They represent systematic failures in gap discipline, tackling technique, and overall defensive coordination. The Commanders' rushing attack ranked among the NFL's elite units last season, and their Week 1 performance suggests they're well-positioned for another dominant ground game in 2025. For context, the Giants allowed 220 or more rushing yards in just one game during the entire previous season, making this defensive breakdown particularly jarring. Here's the controversial question every Giants fan should be asking. If your defensive game plan centers around generating pass rush pressure, what happens when you consistently fail to force obvious passing situations? Several Giants pass rushers have repeatedly emphasized the critical importance of winning on early downs, understanding that even the most talented edge rushers become irrelevant if opponents can consistently run the football and control game tempo. Washington faced second and long situations, 7 or more yards to go, 12 times during Week 1, which initially sounds promising for a defense designed to create pressure. However, the reality was far more troubling. On those 12 supposedly advantageous downs, the Commanders averaged an incredible 12.8 yards per play. 6 of those 12 second and long situations resulted in immediate first downs, while 2 others created third and short scenarios where Washington maintained clear advantages. The Giants managed to create legitimate third and long situations just 4 times throughout the entire game, converting 3 of those into defensive stops. While that 75% success rate on 3rd and long sounds impressive in isolation, it becomes meaningless when you only create those favorable situations 4 times in 60 minutes of football. But here's where the analysis gets interesting. Despite the overall defensive struggles, several individual performances suggested reasons for cautious optimism moving forward. Abdul Carter's rookie debut was genuinely impressive, generating 3 quarterback pressures on 25 pass rush attempts, according to next-gen stats, including 2 quick pressures achieved in under 2.5 seconds. His special teams impact was equally notable, getting his hand on a Tressway punt and nearly blocking 2 additional attempts. For a rookie outside linebacker, these numbers suggest legitimate star potential. Brian Burns delivered exactly the kind of performance Giants fans expected when they acquired him, recording 2 sacks while consistently pressuring Washington's quarterbacks. Kayvon Thibodeau contributed 3 additional pressures according to Pro Football Focus, demonstrating that the Giants' edge rushing duo has legitimate potential to create consistent havoc. Interestingly, Dexter Lawrence didn't record a single pressure despite his reputation as an elite interior pass rusher. However, the explanation reveals strategic implications. Lawrence faced double teams on 69.2% of his pass rushing attempts, creating numerous one-on-one matchups for Burns and Thibodeau. If Carter continues developing alongside the established edge rushers, opposing offensive coordinators may find it impossible to provide Lawrence with consistent double-team help. Paulson Adebo's Giants debut offered another bright spot in an otherwise disappointing defensive performance. The veteran cornerback handled 33 coverage snaps, primarily matched against Washington's top receiver, Terry McLaurin, and allowed just 2 receptions for 27 yards. Pro Football Focus credited Adebo with limiting opposing quarterbacks to a 50.4 passer rating when targeting his coverage area. If Adebo can consistently neutralize opponents' primary receiving threats, it would provide significant support for the rest of New York's secondary. The real question Giants fans must answer, after witnessing this comprehensive failure on both sides of the football, here's the controversial question that will define the Giants' entire season. Was this performance an aberration caused by typical Week 1 rust and poor preparation, or did it expose fundamental flaws that will plague this team throughout 2025? The optimistic perspective suggests that teams often struggle in season openers before finding their rhythm in Week 2, particularly when implementing new systems or integrating new players. The Giants will have an immediate opportunity to prove the Washington game was an outlier when they face division rival Dallas next week. But the pessimistic view is equally compelling. If your offensive line can't protect the quarterback, your skill position players can't make routine catches, your red zone execution is historically bad, and your run defense allows 6.9 yards per carry, those aren't problems that magically disappear with better preparation. What's your take on this disaster? Do you believe the Giants can quickly correct these fundamental issues? Or did Week 1 reveal that this team simply isn't ready to compete at the level necessary for playoff contention? The evidence suggests this might be a much longer rebuilding process than anyone anticipated. But I'm curious whether you see reasons for optimism that weren't apparent in this comprehensive breakdown.